All right. Hey, Mike, thanks so much for the podcast. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Bruce, it's my joy. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. My wife was actually mentioning to me your book, Profit First, before we scheduled this podcast. She's like, you got to check out this book. It's called The Profit First. I'm like, you know what? I should reach out to Mike and see if he'll join me on the podcast. It sounds amazing.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, please give her a big thanks from me for introducing you to Profit First.
Yeah. So you've obviously written many books. Let me ask you this before we get started, before we get into your whole bio. Which book of yours is your favorite?
So my personal favorite is The Pumpkin Plan. Profit First has been of the greatest service, so I'm very proud of that.
Yeah.
But The Pumpkin Plan is just such a joy to write. I had so much fun writing that book. That's my favorite.
How long does it take you to write a book?
5 years.
Does it really?
It's not 5 years of writing. It's 5 years of research, thesis testing, guinea pigging on my own businesses, working with other clients, and the writing itself is probably about a 2-year process. I'm a very slow but deliberate writer. I'm not a efficient, fast writer. I just keep chipping away, and it's done. So 5 years from inception to publication usually.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated with people who can write a book because I can't ever seem to really take the time to write. My brain just goes in a million different directions.
It's hard. I found at least a hack for me is once there's a time frame. So the last year, no surprise, I write the most because I'm like, I got to get this turned in. But I also do these things called sprints with other authors. I do it every morning for about a month, 2-month period. I'm actually in a sprint right now. I did one this morning, 6 a.m. from 6 to 7. We all go on Zoom. Not a word is said. Just one person says writing time, and we all crank away. And at the end of that 1 hour, we post how many new words we've written. And it's just cool to be that accountable to other people by working in parallel.
That's pretty smart. It's like a mastermind group, but for writing.
Yeah. And there's no discussion. It's just get your work done.
Right? That's amazing. Yeah. So let's get into Profit First, because I think our audience is local businesses and not huge businesses, businesses that can do anywhere from $500,000 a year to $2-3 million a year. And I think profit is something that we all struggle with, especially when you have employees and you're running a small business. You always think of the profit as kind of whatever's left over.
Yeah.
And I think your book kind of talks about that and how you should manage that. Can you just describe like your philosophy behind Profit First?
Yeah. Bruce, you pointed out the biggest problem with profit is that it's a leftover. And the foundational formula for profitability says it's sales minus expenses equals profit.
Right.
In other words, profit comes last. And actually, it's even in our terminology. We call profit the bottom line, or we call it the year end. All those terms say it can wait. It's insignificant because in human nature, when something comes last, it means it'll wait. It's the manana syndrome. So what I teach in Profit First is to make profit a habit. And what we do is sales minus profit equals expenses. In practice, every time you have a sale, every time revenue comes into your company, you immediately take a predetermined percentage of that money, 2, 3, 5, 10, 20, 30%. Take that money, allocate it to profit, hide it away from your business. So it's a physical transfer of that money out and away from your business, and then you run your business off the remainder. Effectively, it's the pay yourself first principle applied to business.
And I mean, I'm not going to mention what's happening now because I want this to be evergreen, but we're going through a situation currently that's very important for this whole process.
Yeah, it's life-changing.
Yeah. And if if you didn't do this process of Profit First and you're going through what we're going through now, you could be in trouble.
Oh yeah. And it's interesting. I'm getting email after email. So this is true. Anytime we have an economic decline, rise of competition, shift in industry, unexpected, unprepared situations, it will impact us financially. And I'm getting these emails in right now. I'm trying to look for one right now, but I'm getting them in probably like one an hour right now from readers who read Profit First saying, this has saved my business. I can't believe I'm actually sleeping at night now because I have enough cushion to think and contemplate. Right. They say cash or revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. What happens here is when we have profit reserves, it gives us time to pause. Many business owners that don't have any kind of cash reserve, there's an action, something happens, and there's a reaction. And that reaction can be desperate. And when we have desperate reactions, desperate people do desperate things, we do dangerous moves, and we often hurt our business. Many people out of circumstances like we're experiencing now try to sell their way out of it. And selling your way out of a situation is usually your worst move because sales is more stress on the organization, more responsibility. As you amplify sales, to do that many times when there's an economic decline, businesses will start cutting cost. So more obligation, now even thinner margins or no margins. So we're putting actually more stress on our organization, and it'll tank faster. So in situations like this, we have to look, what is profitable within our business, concentrate on the most profitable parts, and try to amplify profits. And if you're doing the system prior to any kind of economic change, well, then you're in a sweet spot and a safe spot. But if you haven't, you got to react, not reactionary, but really disciplined about focusing on what will sustain you.
So you're saying before you really worry about growth, work on getting that system in place where, because all businesses, when they first start out, you realize, it's probably the most profitable you're ever going to be your first couple of sales at anything, because your expenses are pretty low. So
and it sets this false expectation, right?
Yeah.
I'm doing all the work myself. I got a $200,000 business. I don't have a single employee. I'm taking home buku bucks. And we're like, I've got this nailed. And then our expectation is when we start bringing on more people, it'll be that way. But the reality is now we got to start allocating money toward the resources of people. But the return is now the money's on automatic and not off our own sweat. So our expectation from, the business will continue to have this massive profits in the early stages, and I have to continue to do the work, shifts to the business will have sustainable, consistent profits, but I don't have to do any of the work. That's where our mentality has to go.
Do you find that as the business grows, the profit always kind of shrinks?
It goes through a dip period, I found. So, my passion is very early stage business. I love the businesses that are, brand new startups, 250,000 or less, to the first few stages, which is, about the $5 million point is where I exit out and it's no longer my expertise. Those businesses at 250, the business owner or less is typically the business owner doing the work. From 250 to that 500, even $1 million point, they go through this dip period because now it's the allocation and the systemization of the business to do that same service, but through other people, technology, other resources. Well, during that period, you can't get the same profitability because you have to allocate money now to serve those products and services, those resources. But usually around $1 million point, and these are just rough thresholds, the systemization becomes so effective that a business over $1 million can be extremely profitable, even achieving similar percentages to its early startup phase. It's that bridge over that chasm from doing all the work yourself to the business creating money on automatic. That bridge over is a very narrow, shaky bridge, and people are fearful, and they often get a little bit across, and they run back to the side of doing it all themselves, and therefore they're stuck and they'll never make it across.
Oh man, I totally felt that too when we were running our business before we got over that hump. It's like you get to a point where you're not sure which way to go. Do you hire more people and work on growth and feel like it's going to work out, or do you kind of scale back and realize that maybe we should?
Classic trap. You say, well, let's go back to the good old days.
Yeah,
and the good old days, it's like we're making some money and I had total control, but then you realize the good old days were miserable because you're working 24 hours a day.
True. Yeah, it's so true. So what do you say to somebody? So a lot of our audience is local business owners who are kind of already in the grind of growing their business. If they're not doing what you suggest they do, which is put a little bit of a percentage aside, and maybe they feel like they don't have that money to put aside, where do you think they should start?
Yeah, so if you feel that way, you're totally normal. I want to acknowledge that.
Good.
But we do have to get started today. If you think that hustle and grind is going to drive profitability and you've been hustling and grinding for more than a year, you've proven it's not going to bring about profitability. We have to change something. How to do it is to start allocating a small percentage. I suggest 1%. So set up a profit account. You do this at your bank, by the way. It needs to intercept our behavioral path. If you log into the bank account to see how much money you have, that's the place we manage money. It's not through our accounting system. Where do you normally go? If you do this at your bank, set up another account called Profit. Now, allocate 1% of your income. So $1,000 comes in this week or today, allocate 1%, which is $10. Because that's inconsequential to the operations of the business. If you run off $1,000, you can run off $990. But what is highly consequential is that $10 that's been allocated to profit is your first ever cash profit. It's reserved there for the purpose of rewarding you. And then that behavior, you continue it on. I'm very proud to say we have over 300,000 businesses doing profit first now. And the ones that successfully done it have not gone full throttle into the system overnight. They started off with a simple step, allocate 1% to profit. And maybe a few months later, it's 2 or 3%. You start emboldening yourself, and then you introduce the other accounts I suggest in the book. But start slow and let it grow. That's the key.
Do you find like some people get too aggressive and they're like, I'm going to put 20% in there?
Oh, totally. Totally. It's like going to the gym. Like, you can go to the gym and you haven't worked out in 3 years and you're like, throw 300 pounds on that bench. I can do it. And you rip your shoulders out of your socket.
Yeah.
And then the real loss beyond the injury is like, I'm never gonna go to the gym again because you associate gym with pain and injury. That doesn't work. if you haven't worked out in a long time and you want to start up again, you start slow. Let's learn the stretches. Let's learn proper technique and form. Let's slowly build into this. Muscle builds over time. Profit builds over time.
And people can do this without changing really anything in their business.
That's the best part. You don't change a single thing. What we want to do is actually maintain how we behave. When we try to change our behaviors, like let's say I can go to my accounting system and manage everything in my accounting system. Yeah, I don't look at my accounting system. And that's true for most entrepreneurs. To try to force yourself to do that is not sustainable. We'll do it in the beginning because of raw effort, but that willpower will fade and we'll go back to our standard habits of logging to our bank account. So what we want to do is intercept what I call our behavioral path. If you not naturally log into your bank accounts, set up the profit account there along with, there's what we call the 5 foundational accounts, and do the transfers of money there. Because now you don't change a thing about yourself. You're simply just allocating money before you spend it. So you know its intended use before you spend a dime.
Interesting. So, it's really just training your brain to like forget about that 10% that you start with. And then,
yeah, there's a concept of out of sight, out of mind. So what we do in Profit First is first we allocate money, but then we also use a technique to hide the money. And when you don't see something, you don't use it. There's this concept called Parkinsons Law. He's a theorist from the 1950s studying human behavior. And he noticed that as more supply of something appears, the more we consume. The more time I'm given to do something, the longer it takes me to do that thing. I like cookies. You put 1 cookie in front of me, I eat 1. You put 15 in front of me, I eat more than 1. The supply is dictating consumption. Well, this is true for money too. As more money flows into our business, we spend more. And I bet you a lot of the listeners can relate to this. Your income over time goes, up and down, but over time, hopefully it's continuing up. But it seems almost uncannily our expenses go at the exact same rate. Well, that is not magic. That's Parkinson's Law. More supply, more utilization. Therefore, if we extract and hide our profit, what happens is we put this gap in between where we extract profit, and now we bump up against our operating expenses, which is lower than our income, and we only spend to that point. We actually become very innovative. It's forced frugality too. We spend less. We find efficiencies. We operate our business more appropriately when we take out the profit first.
It's funny you say Parkinson's Law, and I know that for a fact because I speak at quite a few events, and they'll give you I know you do too, they'll give you 6 or 8 weeks to get your slides in.
Yeah,
and they say, they're due the 20th, and the 19th, I'm trying to finish them all up, trying to get them in there before, even though I had 8 weeks to do it.
I'm the exact same way. And what speakers are notorious for that, but speakers are notorious for that because that's the plight of humanity itself. We all do that. The same thing, if you get invited to a gig and the gig's the next day and are we need the slides immediately, all of a sudden you can roll these things out in a couple hours,
True. Yeah. Does this work for any business, no matter what style of business it is? It seems pretty cut and dry that any business you're in can totally do this.
It works for any business that's willing to trust the process. Like I said, we have over 300,000 businesses doing it. The variability in those companies is amazing. Pizza shops to professional firms like law firms, accounting firms, to manufacturers, to online marketers, to even a public company has rolled it out. And so I'm convinced it works for any company, but the mentality is necessary. If we go into it saying this isn't going to work, this is stupid, it isn't going to work, and it is going to be stupid. If we go in skeptical, but willing to challenge ourselves and trust the process, that's when we find it works. So I don't expect people to say, magically by allocating profit, I'm going to have profit. I was skeptical. I've been doing this for myself now for 11 years, and it works for me. Simply set the system and start allocating it. What you're going to notice is your business will start to speak to you. As you allocate toward profit, there's less money to run the business. You're going to start saying, well, I can't pay my bills now. And if you can't pay your bills, you can't afford them. So we have to cut costs. But more importantly, it's going to say, how do we increase margin? How do we amplify the offering that's actually giving us profit? And how do we get rid of the stuff that's not? So it will start to give us direction because the money's just not going to be available and we have to adjust accordingly. So it works if you trust the process for any business.
Now, did you start, when you came up with the profit first, were you in a tough spot and you realized that, listen,
nightmare scenario. So the quick background on me, I grew 2 companies and had exits on one, and they're both in the tech space. One was a private equity deal. The second was a Fortune 500. I thought I was hot shit. I knew everything about business. Look at me. I think I'm a guru. I started another business as an angel investor. I sucked at it, Bruce. I wiped out all my money.
Wow.
Doing the process that I was convinced worked, never considering profit. And in fact, those 2 first businesses that I sold, they were never profitable when I was running them. It was only on the exit. Well, that was finally my awakening, saying, I don't understand profit. I need to figure out a system that works with who I am. So I studied my own behavior, set the system up. Then I went on to study now thousands, but at that point, like dozens and then a few hundred businesses. And I wrote an article in the Wall Street Journal saying, here's a new system. And I started getting emails from these entrepreneurs that test it out. It's like, this stuff works. So that's how it became a book, and then became a commitment of my life, is to eradicate entrepreneurial poverty.
It seems so simple when you think about it and you explain it like that. I wonder why people haven't adapted this before.
Simplicity is really difficult to absorb because it seems too easy. Complexity is much easier to cloak over struggle, because if we throw complexity at struggle, it actually validates the struggle because it's still not working, but we can say we're trying everything. So complexity becomes an excuse. Simplicity seems too easy. It won't work for me. And so we often avoid it. But there's this thing called, I think it's called Razor's Axiom. I may have said that incorrectly, but there's this philosophy out there that usually the right solution is the simplest solution.
It's funny. It's totally true. Like when you think about whatever it is you're trying to figure out, you obviously always overcomplicate things. It's how it always is.
It's human nature. It's human nature.
Yeah. When do you suggest people pull out money from the profit?
Yeah. So what we do is a quarterly profit distribution. I was studying large corporations. Yeah. I don't have an interest in being the next Amazon or Google. For a period of time, I was like, oh, that sounds cool. Now I know the right size business will find me. And I'm understanding my own sweet spot. But I admire those companies. I don't aspire, but I admire them. And what I admire about them is their fiscal discipline. They started same size as us, and they've grown to their size. But the only way to pay 100,000 employees every single week is to master your numbers. And the number one rule from public companies is reward the shareholder, the person who's taking the risk and investment in the business, by giving often a quarterly profit distribution. Well, that's what we should do too. Take that golden lesson, reward the shareholder. As a small business owner, you are a shareholder. You are the backbone of this economy. As a thank you for supporting our economy and employing the world population, 97% of people will never start a business, or 93% will never start a business. 7% only do start businesses. As a thank you, you should take a quarterly profit distribution, just like the big boys.
Wow, only 7% of people start a business. That's crazy.
Isn't that wild? Yeah. And 93% of the world population is dependent upon us to have successful, healthy businesses. Well, a successful, healthy business is profitable. That's the only way we can sustain and keep them employed. And thank you, we have to reward the shareholder.
That's crazy to think about. I feel like everybody, especially nowadays, everybody's an entrepreneur and everybody wants to start a business.
Yeah. So that's yeah. So what happens is, it's called myopic vision. So as we experience something, that's what we start to see. Anthony Robbins talks about the reticular activating system. It's part of our brainstem, that when you are looking for something, you see it. I buy a new car and all of a sudden everyone else seems to have that same car because that car is significant. When I become an entrepreneur, I notice all the other entrepreneurs out there, but we are the minority.
Yeah, it's not easy either. Like it's easy to say I want to start my own business, and like you said, the beginning stages of starting your own business, it can be easy because you're all by yourself. But then once you start to grow, then it starts to become more complicated, and people rely on you, and it's a whole different animal.
It is a hard effing journey. It can be brutal, and I'm speaking to or preaching to the choir here. Everyone listening in knows how difficult it is, but it doesn't need to be more difficult. There's ways to simplify things. And I think Profit First is one mechanism. I'm not saying don't do the accounting, but I'm saying the accounting now becomes secondary. That's only when you have to get into the detail. Work with an accounting professional to guide you through that. There's simple, shortcuts effectively to manage the day-to-day. Profit First, I think, is one of them.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because if you think about it, if you do $20,000 a week in sales, you're saying put $200 aside, which is very insignificant if you think about it over the course of a week, and you put that aside. At least at the end of the quarter, you're going to have some kind of money to feel like validated for what you did.
I've had 45 consecutive quarters of profit distributions, and I'm very proud of what they've done for me and how they've grown. And I also now do a profit share with my colleagues. I'm very proud. I as a business owner, feel that I've taken the risk. So I get 80%, but I share 20% with my colleagues who've taken the risk to work for me. And I'm very proud of that. But I'll tell you that the greatest moment with profit distributions was my very first one. It was $8. I had $16 in my account. I took half out. I got it in all singles just to feel like a big shot. And so I have all these singles, and I went to Starbucks, and I'm like, give me the best stuff you got here. Which, by the way, at Starbucks, $8, nothing is available for $8. But when I had this little cup of coffee, I'm like, for the first time, I'm not using a credit card. I'm not expensing it to the business. I'm not using a debit card. There's no form of debt for this. This is a reward for me. And I got goosebumps just thinking about that. It becomes this mind shift that the business is there to support our lifestyle. And ever since I've been taking, profit distributions. It's a tremendous feeling.
I think too, like in the beginning, you won't really notice it that much, but once you get past a year or 2 years and it starts to build up, even if it's a small amount you're adding every week, you're going to be like, okay, the last 2 years was worth it. Now I can see some significant cash.
You see it. Yeah. So I would argue the first profit distribution you take, regardless of the size, if it's your first ever profit distribution, it is really cool feeling. I think also what happens, and I've seen this in these companies, is that we start expanding that 1% or 2% we set aside, and we start saying, well, if I move that up to 3, 4, 5, and over time we start to grow it, because this is where our business speaks to us. Profit is not a static thing. We constantly want to seek ways to enhance and strengthen our profitability. So by increasing that, we decrease the money available for the operations of the business, and then we reconsider how we are operating the business. Can we do it more cost effectively? Can we introduce efficiency? Can we sell more of the stuff that's working? So we will continue to amplify our profits over time.
What do you suggest, with all your experience in all those businesses, is the appropriate amount to increase it and when?
Great question. So, and I'm kind of defaulting to the book here because there's different guidelines based upon the size of your business. I call it the TAPs, or target allocation percentages. And in Profit First, I do allocate for different categories of revenue, 250,000 or less, 250 to 500 and so forth, what kind of allocations we should be targeting. But the lesson is this: always start with your current position plus one. So if you don't take out a quarterly profit distribution right now, and most small businesses don't, your starting point's 0. So that's when we go to 1%. But maybe you do take a profit bonus at the end of the year of whatever, 3% of your total income. Well, we're going to add 1. So now we go to 4%. Also, one thing that's important to note is profit distributions and owner's compensation are two different things. They both may come out as distributions, but owner's compensation is the pay you would pay someone else to run that position for you. This is your lifestyle account. Profit is a reward as a shareholder. So we look at both those accounts and we try to amplify both. Pay yourself more as a salary, but also give yourself more as a bonus and profit.
That's interesting. And plus, if your business is more profitable, it's probably worth more money if you ever go to sell it.
Oh my gosh, that's the biggest win. I'm so happy you mentioned that, because many people don't even see that. Many entrepreneurs I know at one point want to have an exit. It's their retirement fund or whatever. If you want your business to have value, it has to have a proven profit model. Listen, if I'm looking to buy a business and it's never been profitable, it's just living by hook or crook off the sweat of the owner, that's the
Right.
riskiest business. I don't want to buy that. The day the owner retires, and that's their intention, the whole business is under, no
Right.
value. But if the business is throwing off quarterly profit after quarterly profit and has less and less dependency or no dependency on the owner, well, that's turnkey and it's a money-making machine. I'll put massive amounts of money into buying that. So being profitable increases your value and your valuation when you sell the business.
Perfect example for local businesses, because a lot of times the owner is the manager or general manager of that local business, and they may make $100,000 or whatever the salary is. But if you have no profit, you're just going to plunk somebody in your place and have to pay them $100,000 to run the business. There's no money left over.
There's nothing left. Exactly. So the value of the business is nil, or at least very low.
Right. So this is a great example. I'm going to have to share this information with a lot of people out there, because I think it's very valuable for people. And like you said, start small. You don't have to start with a huge amount of money every week.
Yeah, profit is a discipline we build over time. It's funny. So of those 300,000 plus companies doing it, we've had sadly quite a few thousand failures. And what we've learned from those is those companies go in too abruptly. It's like that gym analogy we used in the beginning. Yeah. They haven't worked out and they throw 300 on the bench press and they rip out their shoulders. Our business, if we say, I've never been profitable, I want to do a 30% profit from day one, it's going to be such a jolt to the business. Yeah. It could crush the business. Or worse, they could say, this system doesn't work, and they never do it and they abandon it totally. So start slow, let it grow.
I'm hard-headed like that too. I'm super aggressive. So I would be one of those people who would want to go in there and start, aggressive, but it would be hard you have to train yourself to be like, listen, it's going to work. Just go slow and steady over time.
Yeah. And one thing we found with Profit First is too, you don't want to ratchet back. So you want to ratchet up from 1% to 5, 10, 15, but going from 15 back down to 10, if we do that, we start training ourselves. It's okay to relieve the pressure on improving profitability. And that's a mistake. So we always want to move forward. Now, there are certain times where the pressure is so great that it's prudent for the health of the business to step back. But if we make it a habitual thing where sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, now we're not developing a discipline of the profit muscle.
Right. Do you have a new book coming out?
Brand new book called Fix This Next. I am so pumped about this, particularly around the times we're experiencing right now. But Fix This Next was designed to address what I believe the biggest challenges that business owners have. And the biggest challenge business owners have is knowing what their biggest challenge is. We just work on everything. Every apparent issue is a fire. We got to put them all out. And we don't know the one impactful thing. So the question is, what's the one thing I need to work on next to move my business forward? So my book, Fix This Next, is a compass to pinpoint exactly what to work on. It goes through a series of questions. It leverages what's called the business hierarchy of needs to pinpoint the action you need to take next.
Interesting. That sounds like I need that.
Yeah, I hope you check it out, Bruce. And I think it applies, interestingly, to a lot of businesses. So we tested out on brand new startups, 1 million, 5 million. We tried it out on a $100 million company. The business hierarchy of needs, the DNA of a business is the same from brand new startup to these mega corporations. We all have this hierarchy. And what's interesting is it's not a ladder. You don't just climb up and your business all of a sudden achieves this amazing permanence. As we grow, foundational level needs will need to be readdressed and shored up. So you cycle through the business hierarchy of needs.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like when you're a business owner, you feel like you know what you're supposed to do, but sometimes you could be working on the wrong things.
Yes, that's exactly it. We call it the gut instinct, and it is extremely dangerous, yet we don't think it is. Because in our self-preservation, it works. Like if you or I are walking down a dark alley and all of a sudden we get the creeps, like something bad's going to happen, please turn around.
Yes.
You probably will be murdered or something. Like, and the reason that works is because of our inputs. We have sight, smell, touch, feel, instinct. Could get together, it's instinct. And it gives us a sensation and we should act upon it. The thing is, we are wired into our own physical body. We are not wired into our corporate body. We don't feel what the business is feeling. It's actually the data within the business that we have to read. So by going through the business hierarchy of needs, we interpret the data. And it's very simple. It's very fast, but we interpret the data we see to answer some basic questions. And it will then point to, yeah, we're at risk here. If we don't do X, Y, Z, and these other things can be ignored.
Wow. Fascinating. I'm gonna have to go check that book out. And if you guys want to go check out that book as well, MikeMichalowicz.com, is that where all your books are available?
Yeah, MikeMichalowicz.com. I'll give you a shortcut to get there, though. It's MikeMotorbike.com because no one can spell Michalowicz, Bruce. So MikeMotorbike.com is my nickname in high school. And all my books are available there, free chapter downloads. And I used to write for the Wall Street Journal, too. So those articles are for free.
All right, Mike, what is it again?
Mike Motorbike, as in the motorcycle.
MikeMotorbike.com. That's much easier for me to spell than Mike Michalowicz. Even though Michalowicz, when you look at it, it's pretty simple when you look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait. Once you know how to spell it and you do your research for 6 years, yeah. But Mike Motorbike's easier.
Amazing. Mike, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast. I super appreciate it.
Bruce, I appreciate you. Thank you, brother.
All right. Hit the stop button. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate it.
Dude, you're solid, man. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If there's anything I can ever do for you, let me know. I'm going to go check out your book right now, actually.
Thank you. Well, this is huge. And just send us the link. We'll promote it on our social media.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Take care, brother.
All right. See you.
Well.